If you have spent 5 minutes in the medical freedom movement, then you know our next speaker. She is a globally recognized doctor from Ohio and was one of the very first to expose the dangers of the COVID vaccines. She had her license revoked and then reinstated and has paved the way for many of the voices in the medical freedom movement. I welcome to the stage the courageous and brilliant Dr. Sherri Tenpenny.
Hi. Hi, everybody. I can't say to him, next slide, next slide, next slide, because my slides are too mobile. Oh, I'll just do it myself. So I've got 15 minutes, right? So I'll just put my watch down here. It is 7 minutes after, so I got 22 minutes. So we are in an unusual situation here because there has been no accountability. Zero accountability in a failed system because the system has completely failed us. And Judy outlined that really super well. You were told they were safe, they were necessary, they were effective, they were not experimental, but they lied. You were lied to by government, by pharma, by public health officials, by doctors. And one of the gifts of COVID that we found out was that how corrupt our government really is, how horribly corrupt our healthcare system is, and how our doctors lie to us too. So how did we get here? If we don't learn the lessons from history, we're going to fail them. We're going to repeat them. You know, that's the way it's going to be. So that's why I wrote the book. So when I started this book, because it was started in summer of 2023, you can change the slides if you want, but I can't tell you to change each one because it floats up. So when the bird flu started again, I wrote a book in 2005 called Bird Flu, It's Not Foul, spelled F-O-W-L. Bird Flu, It's Not What You Think. It was an environmental book. So when bird flu started again, in 2023, my staff found a copy of this book that has been out of print for a long time, and they said, this is really good, why don't you just give it a different title and release it? I said, I can't do that. That was written in 2005. A lot has happened in the last 20 years. So I decided to write it over again. So I reviewed the pandemics of swine flu, smallpox, H5N1, H1N1, and of course the COVID pandemic. And each of these outbreaks, I'm going to make it very clear that each one of these outbreaks, and it's going to happen again, sooner rather than later, are a market test. They are a market test. They push it out there, and they push and push and push, and they see what they can get away with. And then when you got people like me and Judy and the other speakers and things that are in here and other podcasters, what they end up doing is uncovering the truth. They start to blow back. The people start to wake up. And then it just stops. I mean, where did COVID go? Where did swine flu go? Where did bird flu go? All this yada, yada, yada in the last year or two about bird flu, and it just left because they are now crunching the data. They're crunching the data to figure out what worked, what didn't work, what they should use again, and what they should give up on. Remember when they did things like free beer for a year and free donuts? And lottery tickets for a full college education, and all those sorts of things. Well, I'm pretty sure they've decided that those didn't work. But what they found out that really did work was the weaponization of fear, and so that is what they are going to use again. And I was told early on in the beginning of COVID, I met a friend at a conference who had just come back from Europe. It was when we just started being able to travel again. And she'd been to some really high-level political and government meetings when she was in Europe. And she said, all of this happened because America rolled over. That if America would have said stop, it would have stopped. It would have been just another market test. But because all of a sudden, everybody in America got so fearful, they had to put on a mask and they had to lock themselves in, and then they had to get a shot in order to save their job, and they needed to get a shot to see their grandkids and all that stuff. The second week of COVID, this was probably the first part of April, I said, I have the absolute 100% cure for COVID. And everybody's going, what is that? What is that? I said, turn off the television. Just turn it off. And so when this starts again, which it is going to, sooner or later, and I think it's going to be sooner rather than later, just remember those lessons. Remember, it was because America got so fearful that they just rolled over. And they bowed their knee to the pharmakia in order to take away their fear. Instead of saying, Lord, the spirit of fear has grabbed me by the throat, please take it away from me and get rid of it, everybody decided they needed a shot. They needed to be safe. They needed to not die. Well, that's a whole big conversation that people should have had. And so when we decided that, the things that were in these shots were unapproved. They had the lipid nanoparticles, the mRNA, the spike proteins, the EUAs, and they stole the word vaccines and they called it a vaccine. But remember that there was a whole bunch of junk in the vaccines before they even created COVID. They had aluminum MF59, and the ASO adjuvant systems that are by GlaxoSmithKline. And what I always tell people is that if you have to get a vaccine, if you're in the military, if you're court ordered for whatever reason in the middle of a divorce or whatever, and you have to get a vaccine, ask what kind of vaccine you have in stock, doctor, and refuse any vaccine that ends in RIX. That's a GlaxoSmithKline vaccine. It has the horrible, awful ASO system of adjuvants in it. And you'll know it, it's like Boostrix, Pediarix, Flurix. You'll know it because they have this little thing that the vaccines that they make, and then RIX. They are the worst, they're the dirtiest, they have the most ingredients in it, and in my opinion, they're the most toxic. So make sure that you remember that little thing, as if you have to get a vaccine, and hopefully nobody in here will ever be in that position, but you have friends and family members that are, and you have friends and family members' kids that are. So it's really important to remember, don't get if you have to, if you're forced to by the courts or by the military, do your best to not get injected with something ending RIX. There's some other things that you may not have known about the different shots. Did you know that flu shots that are made with eggs, they still have egg particles in them? But now they're also making flu shots from bugs, from dogs of kidneys, from kidneys of cells of dogs called the MKCD cells, and those particles are being in the shots too. They're making shots from Chinese hamster ovary cells. Those are in the shots. Did you know that if your kid gets every dose of every vaccine on the schedule, by 18 years of age, they'll have almost 12,000 micrograms of aluminum injected in their body, which goes into their brain, their kidneys, their liver, and their bones. And that one of the inflammatory things about osteopenia and osteoporosis is aluminum, cadmium, and mercury and other metals that are in your bones. So if you've been told you have osteopenia, or you are edging towards osteoporosis, one of the most important things you need to do is to get the metals out. And there's a lot of chelating agents out there now. There's different zeolites that are available. There's EDTA that's available, IV or oral EDTA. But in order to stop the inflammatory stuff going on in your bones, the first step is to get the metals out. And 60% of all aluminum that you've been exposed to in your life is stored up in your bones, and 90% of the lead. So there isn't a test you can do to measure how much metals are in your bones. You can just assume that it's there and do what you can to remove it. Did you know that kidneys are the main way that infants excrete aluminum from their body? And that their kidneys aren't even active enough until 2 years of age to get rid of the aluminum in that pediatric poisoning schedule. I refuse to call it a pediatric vaccination schedule anymore, and I hope everybody else in here will do this. It's the pediatric poisoning schedule that parents are bullied into, and you can just drop that places like mic drop at places like if a friend or a family member says, yeah, they got an appointment tomorrow to go get their shots. Oh, I guess you've bought into the poisoning schedule. I get it. And mic drop that, because I think that if we start calling it what it is, the pediatric poisoning schedule, that particularly people that are on the edge, that they're not really sure if they should vaccinate or not, will start to do their homework. And kids don't, by the time they're 2 years of age, they will have been injected with 4,700 micrograms of aluminum that they cannot get out of their body because their kidneys aren't active enough until 2 years of age to inject it. So they have all of that aluminum that's gone into their brain, their bones, their kidneys, their livers, and are stored up in there. And did you know that a flu shot, the big deal yesterday or a day before yesterday with ACIP is that they finally said, okay, uncle, we're going to take the mercury out of the flu shots, which they should have done forever ago. And they made a really big deal about the fact that 94% of flu shots are made that are mercury free now. Well, that means 6% have mercury in them. And in the calendar year 2024 to 2025, there were 148 million flu shots produced in America alone. 6% of that is 8.8 million doses of mercury-laden flu vaccine went into somebody's arms. So it's good that they took that away. But did you know that flu shots only prevent illness 14% of the time? 14% of the time. When the swabs are initially tested, only 14% turn out positive for a flu, and that's how they type them, and you hear all that stuff in the news. The other 86% of the time, when people get sick during the winter, they get sick from something else. They get sick from a different virus or from a bacteria or from a chemical contamination or something like that. So you can do better with just getting a vitamin D test. So one of the things that you go, if the doctors are pushing you in the fall to get a flu shot, say, doctor, I'd really prefer that I get a blood test and find out what my vitamin D level is. Because your vitamin D level should be somewhere between 80 and 100. And if it's lower than that, if you beef up your vitamin D level, you don't need that toxic stuff injected into your body with or without the mercury. And you probably know that MMR, chickenpox, hepatitis A, and the shingles shot are all made of cells from aborted fetal tissues. Okay, but did you know that some of the vaccines that are out there that are being made are cultured in cancerous tumor cells? And some of those cells end up in the vial and get injected in somebody's arm. Did you know that the current government corruption in healthcare started with the Healthy People program in 1980? That we set some really simple goals from 1980 to 1990. The Surgeon General set that up, and all the people that say the Surgeon General is just has no authority and doesn't do anything, it's really not true. The subtext of what the Surgeon General can do if the Surgeon General wants to is really important. So who becomes that Surgeon General is really important. And the goals that they made in 1980 to 1990 were simple things like exercise more, get more sleep, stop smoking, wear a seatbelt and stuff like that. But now so every 10 years they set new goals. And the goal from 2010 to 2020, which was Healthy People 2020, they had over 1,200 goals that they were snooping into every area of your life because the healthcare is the new gold. And there's over 2 million people that can mine your data. HIPAA doesn't do anything to protect your data that's in a database or in an electronic medical record. Only thing that HIPAA does is it prevents me from saying, Susie Joan has cancer. I can't say that from a stage or reveal what's wrong with a certain patient, but HIPAA does nothing to protect you from the backside. So all of these things of the mass surveillance really is a really big deal. The social determinants of health got started in 1970, and in 1970, they've now become institutionalized. So put up the last slide. Flip forward to the end, or just go to the last slide. So all of this stuff and more is in the book that I wrote, Zero Accountability. And if you want to use that, can you just put up the last slide? You don't need to flip through them. Can't you just go to the last slide? Oh, okay. All right. Keep going. You go faster. There. So there's a QR code if you want to get your copy of the Zero Accountability. Right now it's only sold on Amazon because Barnes & Noble is strong-arming us. and we're about to sell it from our own website, but we don't have a distribution center in our website to be able to sell them out. So I wanted to write a book that was about 200 pages. When this one got to 400 pages, I decided I needed to stop because it took about 18 months to write, but it's 25 years of information and research that I've done. So I hope that you can see the subtitle is How Big Pharma Weaponizes Vaccines, Public Health, and the Law. People are really enjoying reading it. They said it reads like a suspense thriller. So I hope that I gave you some really key little things for your bones, vaccines to avoid, what you can do for your overall health, and how the government lied to you. Thank you so much.
All three of our kids participated in the Pfizer vaccine trial.
5 days later, she said they were running across the court. Junior just collapsed.
She screamed, "Mom, Mom, my heart feels like it's being ripped through my neck," like screaming, crying.
She had a 5-minute seizure 2 hours after the vaccine, and then 2 hours after that, she had another 5-minute seizure.
I was quadriplegic for close to 2 months.
Within days, I was horrifically ill.
She would black out. Yeah, go into these breakers. It's like I'm not there, someone else is there.
Hey, listen.
One of her friends told us that she had gotten the COVID vaccine because we had no idea.
She's in a wheelchair. She can't feel from the waist down. She has an NG tube. She can't eat. She can't swallow.
We had a nurse laugh at us. We had a doctor laugh at us.
Let's call vaccine hesitancy what it really is, willful stupidity.
With those statistics, that if they're accurate, they constitute a signal that there could be a problem with these vaccines.
No.
Okay, and why is that?
I think it's more complicated than.
If they don't produce results that sell the vaccine or the drug, that sponsor's not coming back.
The 18-year-old healthy daughter, there was nothing wrong with her. She had no comorbidities. She had nothing wrong with her. And she's just gonna die.
They'll block me on Facebook all the time. Twitter, knock me off.
Big tech is basically harassing and intimidating the victim, basically medically gaslighting them by denying the validity of their injuries.
I didn't know about any of this until I was a person in it. I had no idea how bad this was.
It took nothing to be presumed positive for COVID.
Yeah.
But it takes everything to be presumed positive for a vaccine injury.
My kids were healthy. They just wanted their lives back.
This may be the most profound scandal in human history.
This was the answer. This would have halted the pandemic.
I have lost trust in humanity, in my government, in my agencies. Trust is very hard to get back.
Something is going very wrong in this world.
The pharmacists were denying the treatment, which to me is outrageous.
Our generation let this happen. We don't know what to do.